Welcome back to Hilal Live. My name is Faraz Patel. We're coming to you from our Cape Town studios. Of course, we are in the State of the Nation 2024 week, and the guys from Joburg have made the trip down to Cape Town. Now, of course, I was going to introduce to you my guest to take us through right up until 8 o'clock, and we were talking about the impact of apartheid that had in South Africa, and of course, the privilege most South African whites experienced during those horrendous years of the National Party. And we ask ourselves that when we look at what's happening in Israel akin to apartheid South Africa, many of the privileged individuals of the country would have taken the stand for Israel, or would have said, well, this is not my business, why should I get involved? But a certain individual has said, no, it's time for me to get involved. It's time for me to voice my concerns and speak out against it. And it gives me great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Elma Ross, who has a PhD in educational psychology. And of course, she lived in the Middle East. She's going to share her experience of that, but also why she is standing in solidarity with the people of Palestine. Dr. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening. Yeah. I'm so privileged to be here, and I really hope that I could help educate people to understand the plight of the Palestinian people.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Ross, talk to us about, you spent 6 years in Saudi Arabia, and then how many in Oman?
3 years in Oman.
So what did you learn about, obviously, a different culture that you've been in South Africa for all of these years, most of your life. You go, of course, to the Middle East. So talk to us about that culture change and how it has, of course, changed you.
Well, I learned that everything I knew or had been taught was totally wrong.
Right.
Once you live there, you realize how generous, super generous the Arabic people are, and that they are not warmongering, and that they are really people who help each other. When my husband had a serious accident, even the patients, the visitors of the other patients would bring me stuff while I was visiting. Actually, as a matter of fact, and that wasn't on purpose, but this dress that I'm wearing was given to me by the visitors of other patients when my husband was in Ibri in Oman in a hospital after an accident. And also I learned that for the first time, that there are Palestinian Christians. It had never been taught to me, look, there are Palestinian Christians. And that made me think. And so I started reading, and in 2016 I spent 3 weeks in London in archives and in libraries, and I looked up on the Balfour Declaration and the Sykes-Picot Agreement and the Plan Dalet and the Nakba. And then I realized that everything that I had been brought up with is one big lie. And now that we are retired, we often travel to Stellenbosch University Library, and we take out books, and we have taken out quite a few books on apartheid in Israel against the Palestinians, and the comparisons to here. And how the even Dr. Verwoerd, Dr. Hendrik French Verwoerd said that Israel is an apartheid state. They implemented differently.
I mean, he could say that.
Yes.
He could. I mean, people need to understand who Hendrik Verwoerd was. The father, one of the forefathers of apartheid.
Yes. And you have to adjust your perception of a situation once you become informed. And what I can't understand is that with the internet now, look, everybody can't go spend 9 years in the Middle East, that I get. But with the internet now, how you can still think that the Zionist state, it's not really the Jewish, the true Jewish state. The Zionist state could actually get away with everything that they are doing. And what they are doing against the Palestinians on a daily basis since 1947, actually. But they started with their violence much earlier than that, after the Balfour Declaration. And in 1947, and I got that from a photocopy that I made from a book. It was Begin, a biography by Eric Silver that was published in 1984, when a British terrorist, Israeli terrorist gang actually murdered 6 British paratroopers in their beds.
Are you referring to the Stern gang?
Yes, the Stern gang. And they caused, at the time, it was 100,000 pounds worth of damage to railways.
Yes.
So, and in 1967, for anyone who knows about that, they attacked the USS Liberty. Their own allies. They attacked that ship.
The United States of America.
Yeah, the United States of America. They attacked their signal ship.
Yes.
What worries me is, what do they do that we don't see on the media, given the horror, the absolute horror of what we do see? Like, they plowed people into the ground. If you would do that to animals in South Africa, the SPCA would see you in jail.
Yes.
And yet they are getting away with it.
Dr. Ross, I want to ask this because, you know, when it comes to the liberation of Palestine, it's been stereotyped. You know, it's either Black Africans or the South African Muslim community. And of course, we saw this, but we've seen a revolution, a change where many of our white compatriots, like yourself, have come in. You know, you've enjoyed the benefits and the privileges of apartheid. I mean, your husband was telling us off air that he served as a paratrooper for the South African National Defence Force under the Prime Minister P.W. Botha.
Yeah.
Why did you change? What was it? You could have sat comfortably and said, this is not my business. I don't need to go ahead and fight or raise my voice for the people of Palestine. Why should I? Why did you change?
Well, I think once you get to that point that you realize that you had been lied to, you are angry. I got really angry that I had been lied to through the media and through what I had been taught at school all those days. And then I just wanted to shout it out that what you're saying is not true. And also, I think it's just your conscience that tells you, but now I've got to speak the truth. I can't just sit there and hear all these lies that people are saying, and some things are half-truths, and just keep quiet. At some point in your life, you just have to realize that you have to stand up. And also, to be quite honest with you, if it could happen there, it could happen here. And in South Africa, 120 years ago, we had the Anglo-Boer War, when there were 41 concentration camps here, and my folks were in the concentration camps. And but also many black people were in the concentration camps, so it is not far-fetched to think that kind of thing could happen here. And what also really gave an impetus to this is that when I saw that photo on 7 October of how the people broke out of, the Palestinian people broke out of that cage. Why would they have to be in a cage in their own country? And in the past, I've read extensively about the checkpoints, the humiliation of going through those checkpoints, and also the checkpoints in the West Bank. And I've listened to many ex-soldiers actually saying, coming out and saying how they had to weld the front doors of homes shut so that the Palestinians wouldn't walk on that street. Then they had to climb through the roof and down a ladder on the other side to reach the other street.
And it's very akin to apartheid here in South Africa, of course, where you know, the Land Act, the Bantu, you know, the Bantustans, your dom passes, as they would call them, the benches, the beaches, where it was whites and blacks only. So it's like history has copied and pasted itself.
Yes, yes, and Indian people were not really allowed to travel through to live in the Free State.
Yes.
They could travel through the Free State
Yes.
over a period of 2 days or something with a special license.
Yes, sure.
It was very much a petty apartheid here. We had it on the law books. Apparently there they don't have it that much on the law books, but they have other organizations that they allow to install a form of apartheid. And in a sense a very, very vicious form of apartheid. And Palestinians are not allowed on certain roads. And that wall that they have that makes it difficult for farmers in the West Bank to even get to their farmland.
Yes.
They're trying everything to make life as difficult as possible. Of course, they have a few tokens even in their parliament or something, but the majority of the people suffer extensively under the occupation. Illegal occupation, just like here, it was illegal.
Definitely. After the break, I continue my conversation with Dr. Elma Ross. We're going to be talking about a video, of course, she was part of during one of the many pro-Palestine marches that happened at the Sea Point Promenade. Do stay tuned to Hilal Live. I'll be back after this break. Welcome back to Hilal Live in conversation with Dr. Elma Ross. Dr. Ross, before you talk about the book, I want to talk about that video. You were there at Sea Point Promenade. As a South African, how proud does it make you feel that you see this outpouring of support for the people of Palestine?
I am very grateful for everyone here that actually stands up, and I admire Dr. Naledi Pandor for everything she's been doing. She is absolutely amazing. And all over the world, people who are standing up, ordinary people like I am, who take a little flag and try to march. I can't always march, but I wait at the end of the assembly, and we try to do our bit. And some people even in wheelchairs going. That is, I think that must help them to know that we are standing with them. The world is standing with them.
Dr. Ross, let's talk about the books that you've read. Of course, Ilan Pappé,
Yeah,
who is an Israeli Jew. He's out and out. And he writes this book about the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, of course, the Nakba. And even now, till today, he's giving a lot of commentary about what is happening, which is anti-Israel, which is, of course, upsetting the establishment in Israel. These books, how much did it change your understanding of what is actually happening in Palestine?
Well, to be quite honest, before I read his book, I read so many other documents that it was like a confirmation. But what I do like about this book is that he has an extensive bibliography of well-known
with maps and
people.
Pictures also. Yes.
And I've listened also to him on YouTube, and at one stage he realized that even some of the other Jews who were in Israel, who stood with him, made a 180-degree U-turn, and he was very much on his own. But this book talks very much about the Nakba and what happened, and how people would wake up and then in the middle of the night, and they would be shooting by Israeli soldiers, and people would be killed, and some people would be would flee, like Deir Yassin, and also to Noura. But what was very significant to me is that he noted that there would actually been a law by Israel that when they had to talk about peace negotiations, they were not allowed to mention the Nakba. And now many people say that the Arabs would just wipe the peace resolutions off the table, but they don't know that the core and the root of the problem had not been addressed, and that is why those peace negotiations fail. I mean, it's like saying we are now moving into your house, and you can go live in the dark shed, and now you've got to sign that it's okay,
Yes.
and you've got to be happy with
Everything's
it.
being done against your will, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so it is a total scam to think that people should settle for that. I don't know how they're going to resolve it, but in South Africa, I think we did fairly well, considering the dire situation that we were in, the bankrupt situation that we were in. But I could see from his book how he also addressed the law that said that if you were away, it was an absence law. I can't remember exactly how, but it was if you were absent for maybe one day from your place,
Yes.
it could be annexed
Yes.
without compensation. And also they threw out people out of their towns. There were Christian towns where the Christians were thrown out in 48 and in 1951, when they wanted to go back, they couldn't go back, and they went to court about it.
Yes.
And then the court said, no, you can't go back now, it's military zone. And before they knew it, some Israeli settlers were living there. So we were not told those things. And now that we get to have books, we can.
Yes.
This book I took out from the public library.
All right, okay.
So you can, even if you don't go to a university library, you should be able to get hold of it. I tried to buy it through exclusive books, but I'm on a waiting list. It seems like forever.
Well, it's quite a good selling book then, if that's the case.
Yes, yes.
And that brings me to my next question, Dr. Ross, is that awareness, and we see through social media, and we see through, of course, just word of mouth, that the tide is changing. You know, earlier on I was speaking to a very, you know, a well-respected Maulana Abdul Khalik Ali, and he was saying that the tide continues to change. We see European countries like Spain and Belgium, when UNRWA, the United Nations Refugee Workers Agency, suspended its funding to Gaza, Spain said, no, we're going to continue. Belgium said they will continue. Norway said they would continue. And it just shows that even the Western countries now are starting to slowly but surely change their perception. How important has since October last year till now, the changing of perception, how much of an importance have you seen in that, and especially amongst communities where they were either pro-Israel turning against them, or communities who didn't really care, saying enough is enough, there has to be a stand for the people of Palestine?
Well, this was since then that I became aware of the Jewish organization here in South Africa.
African Jews for Free Palestine, yes, of course.
They are here. Unfortunately, I have to admit, in the Afrikaans community, I get a lot of insults. I'm now developing quite a.
Is it because because of course the National Party were very close friends with Israel, and because I mean, given that they have had that privileged background, that why should we care about a nation that does not look like us? Do you feel that could be the reason why?
Well, it could play a role because in the 70s, Israel sold us boats,
yes, of course,
boats. That, by the way, didn't work here very well because it was for the Mediterranean.
Yeah, sure.
It was also a fake thing. But anyway, they did sell us something, and people do have that relation. But I think it's also, as the rabbi here said, evangelical Christians. Some interpretations of the Bible that could have been based on the Schofield Bible that plays a role. And then I would put up, but even if you didn't go by the Bible, then you should look at the 10 Commandments. And also in Ezekiel, there is a verse that says Israel, the real Israel, will live in peace with no walls. And the Israel that's living there now has a big wall that they erected themselves, and they are definitely not living in peace. So they are not the real one.
Dr. Ross, we've got about 30 seconds.
Okay.
Just to people that are not understanding what is happening, and for someone, of course, came from a place of not understanding to finding what the real truth is. What is your message to them in 30 seconds?
Please read on the Balfour Declaration and on the Nakba. Once you understand a bit more about the Nakba, you might be more enlightened.
Dr. Ross, absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for making the time for us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. If anything I can do, every little bit I think helps.
Dr. Elma Ross, thank you so much. That's Dr. Elma Ross. She has a PhD in clinical psychology and, of course, has really seen, of course, through reading source material, just the real situation, of course, what is currently